Hi, everybody. Rebecca Nelson here, Wine Club Director at Becker Vineyards. We're so glad to have you guys join us for our 8th virtual tasting now. You guys have been so great joining us on all of these. Tonight, we're going to be trying our 2018 Cabernet-Syrah Reserve. Now, this wine is normally only available in retail stores throughout the state of Texas. It's not one that you can normally get if you're outside the state. So we're really excited that we were able to include this one. So those of you who have never had it before, I really hope you enjoy it. We've got some special guests on tonight. Once again, we have our winemaker, Jon Leahy. And then we also are going to have Dr. Joseph Becker on tonight. And then as a special treat, one of our wine growers, Mr. Jet Wilmeth. So we're really excited for everybody to get started. Hope you've got this wine in your glass. Go ahead and give it a smell, give it a taste, and enjoy, you guys. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And tonight we're joined by Joe, and Jet will be joining us here shortly. Jet Wilmeth is our grower for one of the Cabernets, actually two of the Cabernets that are in this blend. So, Joe, cheers. Welcome to the broadcast.
Cheers.
We're joined by your assistant.
Yes, can you guys hear me and see me okay?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
You're doing well. And Jet, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to say a couple words. This is my 5-year-old junior assistant winemaker, and Dad and I were talking before this virtual tasting. People kind of always wonder about, when you grow up in a wine family, how you're introduced to wine. And my father kind of befriended, as many of you've heard, Robert Mondavi early on, and he, when they asked him how he was introduced to wine, he said that when he was very little, his grandfather or father would take a piece of bread and dip it in a little bit of wine and let them try it. And so we've kind of puzzled over how to introduce our grandchildren and children to wine, and hopefully having a better experience than my attempts at raiding my father's wine closet when they were on vacation. But nonetheless, we have one of the things that's kind of become a ritual in our family is allowing my kids, Dr. Becker, my father's grandkids, to have just a little finger taste of wine. So I brought on my assistant today. And what's your name? Nolan. No, he goes by Nono. That's what his little brother calls him. So Nolan, would you please demonstrate how you have been taught to taste wine in our family? And Nolan, would you care to comment on the wine? It's good. He likes it. But anyways, we are very excited to talk about our Cab Syrah today. But as always, I'm excited to be here tasting with everybody, and feel lucky to get to do this. So I'll turn it back over to John.
Well, I appreciate Nolan joining us tonight. And folks, I'm sorry if my audio is a bit scratched. I will try to keep it to a minimum, which is hard for me because I love talking. Anyway, I wanted to introduce the other gentleman on the team. This is one of our growers, Jet Wilmeth. He and his wife, Gay, run the Diamante Doble Vineyard. And he also farms another vineyard called Six Hearts. And so, Jet, welcome to our broadcast. Are you there? So we may be having some technical difficulties here. So if he hears us, he'll join in. Anyway, let me describe, actually. Joe, feel free to jump in as well.
Sure.
On the vineyards. So up there in Tokyo, Texas, two of the Cabernets that are in this beautiful wine come from the Tokyo, Texas area, which is between Brownfield and Plains. This vineyard literally is well out, away from everything. When you drive up to it, it's all flat area, and then suddenly you see this green vineyard joining us. They come up on it. And it's absolutely fantastic. Jet grows several varietals for us. Some of the challenges out there. So, Jet, can you hear us now?
I am, yeah.
Okay. we're just trying to describe your vineyard, and I wish you'd tell everybody when you started growing grapes up there.
So I've been a cotton farmer all my life, and cotton got fairly cheap per pound. We're pouring water on products that don't deliver as much revenue back, and water is so precious. So we started looking at wine grapes as a better return on the money and a better use of our water, very precious resource. And it's been a very lucrative thing we did. It's not as difficult to grow grapes up here as it is peppers. Peppers take a lot more water. Wine grapes take much less water, and we don't get many accolades in the pepper industry for growing the best pepper, but we do in the wine industry. We get some accolades on, growing good grapes, good quality grapes.
I think I would. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would point out that Jon and Jet are responsible for a number of the double gold medals that we've won in the San Francisco International Wine Competition for the past several years, and so it's I think it's the best embodiment of the grape, what grape growing has become in Texas, and also what winemaking has become in Texas.
Well, I definitely agree with the grape growing, and thank you for the compliment on the winemaking. I do want to take this opportunity to get everybody at home to lift their glass, give everything a swirl and a sniff, and then give it a taste. Jet, do you have a glass of wine to join us?
Yes.
So this is our Cab-Syrah, everybody. So if you've got this bottle, let me get it a little closer. Sorry about the long arm reach. That's our Cab-Syrah Reserve. It's what we're tasting tonight, the 2018.
And I would just to make a comment about the bottle, because I know we want to get to the harvest and kind of the winemaking, but the label is a wood carving done by the artist Tony Bell, who, as many of you know, has done most of our labels. But it was a wood carving of the old Friendly's Tavern in Austin. It was
Nice.
very much frequented by my mother and father in their college days, and so it has a lot of meaning to us in our family. Nolan, you didn't get to have a little taste and cheer. So let's do one more finger.
Absolutely.
And say cheers. Say cheers.
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 Thank you.
That's awesome. So Jet, back. I want to kind of roll it back just a little bit, back to the Cabernet. Growing Cabernet in Texas. I'm familiar with growing Cabernet on the West Coast, and over the last 8 years have been becoming familiar with some of the challenges that y'all face. But could you give us just a little brief overview of the growth cycle and the vintage year, a typical year, if there is such a thing?
Okay. Well, so normally we don't have to worry about the freeze in the fall, October, but we took it on the chin last year. We had a Halloween freeze that was a record setter. Got down to 15 degrees, and it shocked some of the buds into death. We do have bud break, and it's awesome. It may be secondaries,
Mm-hmm.
but the other thing we deal with is the spring frost, and we just had 3 nights of sheer cliff. We're looking over the edge, and it scares you a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, we had a little teeny bit of damage on Sangiovese, but the cab came through, the Merlot, the Malbec.
Well,
Dolcetto is a champ.
Sure. So, okay, outside of and every year we understand every year is going to have those unique challenges, and you guys do bear the brunt of those, not only those challenges, but the economic challenges that follow after a hard freeze. But your fruit, when it comes in to me, Jet, has got to be some of the most consistent. It's nice tight berries, evenly developed clusters. I've had the joy of driving with you in your truck through your vineyard. I'm not quite sure at 110 miles an hour how we see anything.
We keep going faster. Dr. Becker, Richard Becker was talking about 60, and I swear I never got over 20.
Now, Jet, my mother says you were going 100.
Yeah, I hear that, but no.
Well, the grapes you grow are fantastic. And I have to ask, of all of the varietals you have in the vineyard, which one's your favorite?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Every varietal brings its own accolades, as well as some devastating things from time to time. Um, Hailstorms, for instance, affect different varieties different ways, and a lot of that has to do with the canopy. But some of it is just how tender is the skin of the fruit.
Okay, so you back to the fruit, because you grow two of the Cabernets that are in this wine. You grow the Cab that's on your immediate property right next to your home, and then you also farm a couple miles away. You farm the Six Hearts vineyard, and the Judge and Judge Hart are wonderful folks. And what do you account for the differences in those two fruits? I've seen the soil, I've seen the culture in the vineyard, but they're two distinct Cabernets. So can you give us a little insight there?
Well, and my brother's cab, and it's adjacent to mine, but
Mm-hmm.
it still is enough different that you're like, what? Same soil types, but the depth of soil has a part to play, as well as what crops were grown on it before. Um, I know on the hearts over there, they're closer to a caliche layer. Here at my house, we're 8 feet down to caliche. Over there, they're only like 4 feet. My brother's is like
Right,
6 feet.
right.
So each one of those that plays a part.
Okay, all right. The so I also have to get into the Syrah portion of this. So everybody at home, so you know that we've got um, we have four Cabernets in this. So two of those come from Jet. Another one comes from the Talent Vineyards, and the fourth one comes from the Becker Vineyards here in Stonewall. And then the Syrah portion of this, which is about 18% of the wine, comes from the Becker Vineyards as well. So we've got a wide variety of Cabernet types in there. And I find it very interesting when we go to the actual blending portion of this, because we have 5 Cabernets, 6 Cabernets to choose from. And within those, we culture those Cabernets slightly differently each year as well. We ferment them differently. We use a fairly standard barrel program on each, but year to year, I change my mind on how much new and oak goes into this. Your Cabernet and the Six Hearts Cabernet seems to do very, very well with a higher portion of newer oak. And you have a very, and I take that, for me, my decision is because of the tannins that I've seen in your Cabernets and stuff. And I want you to talk a little bit about the red dirt up there and what it is that you think adds to the vines.
Well, we have a reddish clay, which brings a ferocity.
Mm-hmm.
And so another thing that we have here at my vineyard is we have age on our vines compared to my brother's and Hart's. The Hart's vineyard is much younger. My older cab is 20 years old, and the younger one is about, let me think, 12, 13 years old, I guess. And I think that has a part to play in it.
Sure. I agree. Joe, what are some of the things that you like about this? I want everybody to take another sip and swirl, and then we're going to discuss the actual nuances of the wine. So join us, Jet. I got to get your opinion.
Yeah, no, this is a blend that we've done for many years, and it's interesting. If you look at different Syrah. Syrah is also known as Shiraz in some parts of the world, in Australia, and in France, it's Syrah is kind of the typical traditional Rhone, one of the traditional Rhone Red Valley grapes, and I know that it's a difficult grape to grow, but it's interesting that a lot of the newer blends have included this Cabernet in it, and it gives it kind of a fuller bodied. A lot of the wine writers will describe pencil shavings in it, but I think it's a very interesting blend.
Well, for you folks who are just joining us, I'd like to let you know the gentleman in the center of your screen is Jet Wilmeth. He is one of our growers. He's from from Tokyo, Texas, in between Brownfield and Plains. And I'm unfortunately, we're having some feedback problems, so we're having to mute one to two of the mics at a time. So if you can't hear somebody immediately, bear with us. We'll get this back. We're having a bit of a feedback, and according to some of our listeners here, they're giving us feedback live to let us know. So, Jet, why don't you give this swirl a taste and tell me what you find in the wine?
Awesome tannins.
There are indeed. You're a man of many words, Jet. You need to slow down there, buddy. I have to tell a story. The first time I met you back in 2012, when Brett and I took a drive through all of the vineyards up in the High Plains, and it was basically introducing me to the vineyards and the vineyards and vineyard owners to me when I first took over this job. And I never have had so many individual job interviews in a 2-day period of my life. But first time I met you, you were pulling my leg left, right, and center. I think your sense of humor is great, but I will never forget first meeting you, and you're like, well, so you're from California. And I was like, yes, sir. And you're like, did you get lost? I'm sorry, but I thought that was the best. So anyway, Jet, here's to getting lost and finding some wonderful fruit. I want you guys to think about what your favorite food pairing is with this. I want everybody at home to lift the glass one more time. Excuse me, one more time. I'm getting out of my own camera frame. Lift your glass, give it a swirl and a taste. And then, Joe, I'm going to lead off with you about your favorite food to pair with this wine.
Well, actually, if I could back up for a second,
sure.
Because I think one thing I would love to hear from Jet is 17 and 18 were two very interesting harvest years out in the High Plains. When I think of 17, I think of Nolan and I escaping Port Aransas from Hurricane Harvey, and 18, I think of a hotter spring, but they're very interesting harvest years for people to hear about, kind of how it affected the Texas wine industry. I wonder if either of you would have any comments on that.
Absolutely. Not totally, but quite a bit different on the 17 versus 18. 17 to me was almost a perfect year. It was glorious. And it provided us with wonderful fruit. The skin and the pulp or the meat of the grape was the right ratio, and I think that wine is going to be good for a lot of years. It's just it's awesome. 18, a little more difficult year, but still begat very good grapes. A little bit bigger berries as opposed to 17, but still.
Well, I think also the tonnage was fairly high in 17, and because of that, 18 was slightly lower. The vine will balance itself year to year, depending on how many grapes it produces, what it, energy wise. But I know in 17, Fortunately and unfortunately, the reason we had such a great year on the high plains, a ripening year, was because of the low pressure from the hurricanes sitting over the Gulf area for so long. It actually extended the high plains growing as well as down into here, into the hill country, the growing time, the season. As far as 18 goes, I thought 18, you're right, Jet, the berries were slightly bigger, so we had less skin to juice ratio initially off the vineyard, but I thought 18 phenolically was a good follow-up to 17. I really do. I think 18 was an excellent follow-up to that year. So, and the proof is in the bottle, honestly.
Yeah.
This Cab Syrah is just fantastic. And so if you're just joining us, we're tasting the 2018 Cab Syrah, the Reserve Cab Syrah from Becker Vineyards, as collaboration with our growers in the High Plains. Jet Wilmeth is one of those growers. He's the gentleman in the center screen. And then also from the Talent Vineyards here in the Hill Country, as well as our own vineyards in Stonewall. So now back to the important part. Again, the smell and taste. I need food pairings from you guys. So Joe, what's your favorite pairing?
Almost, you could almost pull off a kind of a miso glazed salmon with this. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I think the Syrah. I think Jed is smack on when he says this has brilliant tannin structure. I think that, I always feel that the Cabernet from Jet's vineyard lends such interesting dark fruit notes to the wine, and so I think also you could also pull off some sort of glazed pork that would be excellent with this.
Jet?
The pork. Yeah. We had it during Christmas, and it was awesome.
Kev, it sounds wonderful. Both of those choices are excellent. I am going to go a more traditional route, and I'm going to tell you right now that this goes very well with grilled or barbecue brisket. When we do a brisket, however we choose to do it, I grab a bottle of this Cab Syrah. And for those of you who picked up the 3-pack and joined us for this tasting, that's awesome. If you want more of this, you can actually find it at retailers throughout the state of Texas. So keep that in mind. It is readily available out in the marketplace. So before we wrap this up, I've gotten some questions on the barrel program. I'm going to hit that briefly and remind everybody at home, send us some questions so that we can answer them for you. We've got Jed on the line, so if you have any questions on the culture of the grapes, vineyards, or what it's like to be a grape grower in Texas, then ask that question. Jed will be happy to answer. But as far as the barrel program goes, we did 40% new French oak, and the balance of this was neutral oak. So it's almost all French oak as far as new goes. And then the balance was a blend of both American and French neutral wood. So for me, I consider a barrel after 2 vintages neutral. Anything before 2 vintages, first and second, I consider new. So it's not necessarily 100% first year barrel, but first and second year barrels are new wood for us as far as getting the oak flavors out. So Joe, any final comments on the wine before we get to questions?
Well, I want to make just before we forget one birthday shout out, and the birthday shout out is to my cousin Andrew. Cousin Andrew was one of the very first people to work with us. He and I were once upon a time referred to as grape nuts, and he was involved early on when we hand harvested. We spent summers in Fredericksburg, in Ballinger, when we used to have a vineyard there. He's turning 39, although as I understand it, the federal government has given him a 3-month extension on his birthday. It is tax day. But anyways, I'm thinking about him. He's cooped up in Seattle, and I just want to say happy birthday to him.
Well, happy birthday, Andrew. And I was wondering why I haven't seen you in your lovely biking outfit out of the laundry in a while. So, cheers. So first question I have is from Sarah Meek. Sarah writes, where is the grower from? Well, Sarah, before Jet answers that, I'm going to tell you he is from the planet Mars. or at least it feels that way every time I drive out to his vineyard. So Joe, Jet, were you born and raised in West Texas, and whereabouts?
Well, I grew up, my first 6 years were in Plains. I was born in Denver City, and that's an oil town, but there's a lot of agriculture around there. And then we moved to Tokyo, and I have been at Tokyo ever since. I did a stint in college, as a lot of us do, but came back to Tokyo, and I've been here ever since. I've been farming on my own for 44 years, and but I was with my dad before that for 20 something years. So I've been farming my whole life, basically.
Sure.
Loved biology and chemistry and the schooling I had, and learned a lot. And so one of the things that I learned was about weather, and that is that frost events here that we deal with. One of the things that saved our grapes last night was heat release at the time of water vapor turning to a liquid state. And then again, when it went to almost a frost state, I'm sure there was ice crystals somewhere out there, and it releases heat each time it changes state. Another
Sure.
Gas to liquid to liquid to solid. And
I think one of my favorite things is people don't understand how technical and how science-driven farming is, and how much you have to know. You're not just a jack of all trades. You've got to be on top of so many different things all the time. And so one of the things I want to say is that you're not farming by yourself. I, for a fact, know that your lovely wife, Gay, is the powerhouse behind that operation. So I want to say hi to her.
She left the room. She's carrying shy. Bless her.
Okay.
But
Next question is from Tammy Mott. Tammy asks, what is the difference between the Wilmeth Cab grapes that go into this wine versus the one that go into the Wilmeth Reserve Cab? Well, nothing. So
that's true.
We use the same wine, Tammy. I treat it the same when it comes in the vineyard. I don't even know what barrel necessarily is going to go into what program until I end up starting the blend. Which brings me back to Joe. Joe, would you briefly describe, because I think we must have done 15 permutations.
Yeah. So, I think so a couple things. Just in general, our philosophy has always been that we want to make the very best wine that we can make. We want to make world-class wines in Texas, and so John and my father and our general manager Brett and I, we meet every Saturday and taste through blends of these wines blindly. And I have to say, the Cab-Syrah is near and dear to my heart, and I think we must have gone through, I don't think I can count the number of blends that we went through just to get it right. But I know that the Jet's Cab consistently makes up the backbone of this wine. And, trying to get it right, I believe it's, about 20% Syrah or so. And,
roughly.
Just trying to get the right combination of grapes. And we were lucky to work with people that are as diligent about grape growing as we are about winemaking.
Absolutely. Okay, the final question before we wrap this up here comes from Teresa Massengale. Teresa asks us, I have a couple of friends over, not wine drinkers. They love this and have a question. What are the tannins, they ask? Well, Jet, what are tannins?
Well, that's the part of the wine that some people, if they haven't had a lot of big red wine, if they're tending to be a white wine drinker, they go, oh my, that dries my mouth out. But you get used to it after a while.
Sure.
And it becomes actually a wonderful, like you talked about the brisket, which we're going to have in a little bit, a heavy peppered brisket. And this is one of the ones we're going to drink with it. So. Oh,
absolutely. Well, tannins, the short answer is the tannic acid in the wine is absolutely what you get at the drying portion on your palate. Go ahead, Joe.
Just thinking about that question is one thing we've always loved is when we first started, people were, we always heard, oh gosh, you're growing wine in Texas. Who grows wine in Texas? And I think what's really fun to do now is to take one of your favorite Texas wines, if you're having a virtual tasting party or something of that nature, and to throw a brown bag over it and find some similar Cabernets in this case, maybe from California, other parts of the world, and you will be so totally surprised, as will your guests, as to how these Texas wines compete with wines from all over the world.
I think you're right. Absolutely. So just not to harp on the tannin thing, but to finish that explanation, Teresa, when you get short chain and long chain tannins in the wine, when the wine is very young and green, as we call it, it can taste very bitter on the front part of the palate. And that's because the tannins have not formed longer chains. As they form longer and longer chains you like my helix representation there. As they form longer chains in the wine, it becomes smoother, still dry, but then the tannins also help preserve and carry the weight, the middle weight in the palate, as well as some of the phenolics on there. And it also goes for alcohol too. So I want to wrap everything up here with a reminder.
But I'd like to add, if I might, here on the high plains, we have another thing going for us on the plus side.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the ferric soils, the red, rich, but we have warm days, very warm days, but cool nights. And
Yes.
that helps those phenolics and tannins. And when the sugars are building, they need to cross at a point where it's optimum.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that here in spades on the high plains because of our elevation. We get good quality sunlight, and that equates to more color and tannins and structure in the grapes that make wonderful wine.
Well, I think it can be put that Texas is just a little extra blessed, maybe.
Yes.
All right, folks at home, thanks for joining us. I want to remind you to join us this Friday at 5:30 p.m. We'll be tasting the Canada Vineyards Cabernet Sauvignon and with some paired suggestions on food. And then also look at our website for next week's box is up and going. If you have not ordered it yet, please do so. But I would like to have all three of us raise our glasses to the folks at home, especially to those of you who are serving us in this time, folks in healthcare, the folks on the front lines, everybody that's helping keep us going. We want to say cheers to you, thank you, and wish everyone great health and good wine.
Cheers.
Cheers.